Overrated. Overrated. Overrated.
Did you see the latest UConn game against Notre Dame? UConn suffered their first loss of the season, and Geno Auriemma isn't handling it well. He's outraged, especially since fans have labeled his team and his star, Paige Bueckers, as overrated. Let's rewind for a moment. Auriemma recently became the winningest coach in college basketball history. But let's not forget, his last championship was in 2016. His most recent headline, criticizing Caitlin Clark. Meanwhile, his current star Paige Bueckers is underperforming, and the pressure on her is immense. Sometimes she's her own worst enemy. Bueckers often overpenetrates, trying to force plays in traffic to get to the free throw line. If teams defend her the way Notre Dame did, this will be a recurring problem. Something feels off. Are we witnessing the decline of a basketball legend? Could Auriemma be setting Bueckers up for failure? And what about Auriemma's critique of generational talents like Clark? Is it just sour grapes? Stick around as we unpack the possible fall of college basketball's most decorated coach. By the way, Bueckers was ranked 3rd or 4th in the betting odds for WNBA MVP, a perceived insult to many current WNBA players. Now picture this, it's 2016. Geno Auriemma is on top of the world, having just led UConn to their 4th consecutive national championship with Breanna Stewart. His team was unbeatable, and his legacy unquestionable. Fast forward to today, and things have drastically changed. For decades, Auriemma was the undisputed king of women's college basketball. His UConn Huskies were a dynasty, boasting 11 national titles, countless conference championships, and a parade of All-Americans and WNBA stars like Maya Moore, Nafisa Collier, and Stewart. He will always attract top-tier talent. But here's where it gets interesting. Since their 2016 championship, UConn hasn't claimed another title, not once. 7 years without a trophy might not sound like much for most programs, but for UConn, it's practically a drought. What happened? Has Auriemma lost his edge? It's starting to look that way. His once revolutionary coaching style now seems outdated. While other programs are embracing modern offensive schemes and defensive strategies, UConn appears stuck in the past. The results are clear. UConn's recent performances have been underwhelming, with losses to lower-ranked teams like Notre Dame. These defeats weren't just flukes. UConn looks increasingly vulnerable in games they used to dominate. The pressure on Bueckers is evident. She often tries to carry the team single-handedly, which isn't good for her or the Huskies. The cracks in Auriemma's dynasty are becoming more visible. Top recruits who once flocked to UConn are now exploring other programs. The aura of invincibility is fading. And yet, in the midst of this uncertainty, Auriemma achieved an extraordinary milestone, becoming the winningest coach in college basketball history. This remarkable feat cements his place in the record books, but it feels bittersweet. While his career win total rises, his team's performance on the court paints a different picture. UConn no longer strikes fear into its opponents. Now let's talk about Paige Bueckers. Once the shining star of women's basketball, Bueckers has found herself under intense scrutiny. Her early career at UConn was electrifying. She averaged nearly 20 points, 6 assists, and 5 rebounds per game as a freshman, carrying the Huskies to deep tournament runs. But this season something seems off. Her scoring is down, and in key games like those against Holy Cross and Louisville, her performances were lackluster. Auriemma hasn't been shy about calling Bueckers out publicly, hoping to spark a response. Instead, it seems to have had the opposite effect. Critics suggest that UConn's rigid system may be stifling Bueckers' natural talents. Auriemma's structured approach, while successful in the past, doesn't seem to align with Bueckers' efficiency-focused, pass-first mentality. Meanwhile, on the other side of the basketball spectrum, Caitlin Clark is proving Auriemma wrong. After he doubted her ability to succeed in the WNBA, Clark's rookie season was nothing short of historic. She shattered records, averaged 19.2 points per game, and finished 4th in the MVP race. Clark represents the evolution of women's basketball: dynamic, high-scoring, and captivating to fans. This brings us to a crucial question. Can Auriemma adapt to the changing landscape of women's basketball? The sport is evolving rapidly, with new stars and modern playing styles capturing the spotlight. Coaches who embrace this change are thriving, while those who cling to the past risk being left behind. So, what's next for Geno Auriemma, Paige Bueckers, and the UConn Huskies? Will Auriemma evolve and empower his players to succeed in today's game? Or will his legacy be overshadowed by a refusal to adapt? What do you think? Is Auriemma's time at the top over, or can he rise to the challenge and guide UConn to glory once more? Let us know your thoughts.